We got derps in the field, derps in the field. Sending it.
What's up, this is Hub with probably my last BF3 Beta commentary video. In this vid I will mostly discuss some of my opinions and suggestions towards vehicle balance for BF3. Unfortunately, I did not get a chance to record too much footage of Caspian Border gameplay. My original intentions were to record full squad based matches with live comm. However, as you may know, the squad management in the beta was absolutely atrocious. So I apologize in advance if the footage may seem a bit boring. I may end up having to throw in some leftover footage, and hopefully I'll be able to capture your attention for the duration. Anyways, well, where to begin? Well, first off, it was nice of DICE to provide public access to the Caspian Border map again for within the last couple of days before the beta ended, at least for the PC players. Sorry, consoles. Well, we were finally given a chance to experience the Conquest game mode, a flagship feature of the Battlefield franchise. However, still some mixed feelings and lowered expectations for the upcoming release. Sorry if this may get a little too ranty, or if I may come off as sounding like your typical circle-jerking BF2 vet, but compared to BF2, if you go by the saying, don't fix what isn't broken, then you can apply that saying to the general direction DICE is taking with Battlefield 3. Putting the bugs aside from the beta, still quite a lot of features are still in question whether or not if they will be included in the upcoming release. So far, it has been announced that in-game VoIP support, spectator, battle recorder, along with several other features may not be included at launch, or if at all. It feels apparent with DICE, however appreciated. They no doubt put in a lot of effort into developing the next flagship title in the Battlefield franchise, but it also seems that they will take like 2 steps forward, then take a step backwards. Sure, they've developed a new engine, better graphics, destruction improvement features, yada yada, but they then still fail to include practical features like in-game VoIP support, lower team-based features like squad management in a heavily team-based game. Blows my mind. With in-game VoIP and squad management, these powerful tools were easy to utilize in BF2. Thankfully, DICE has at least revised the squad management part, but VoIP is still in question. Disregard EA and DICE pushing their agenda with Battlelog. Sure, in theory, Battlelog seems nice if it works, but if you still kind of need a contingency plan if that system fails. For example, if you wish to communicate with a random in the gunner position of a vehicle in BF2, you could simply invite that person to your squad in-game and be all set for VoIP. The convoluted method of doing this would be something like minimize the game, send friend request, accept the request, invite the person to your party, then start up Battlelog VoIP, all while hoping the game doesn't crash. Kind of crazy. I used to have more of a mindset of wishing Battlefield 3 would be more like a BF 2.5. Still would have been fine with that. I can live without the commander position. I'm willing to accept most of the overall changes made in the design for BF3. However, failure to implement these team-based utilities is what concerns many for what is considered to be BF3, not Bad Company 3. Now, in terms of maps, I try not to generalize, but as Dave Chappelle put it, I do use percentages and averages. With only 9 maps available at launch, assuming they will be split between, say, 5 infantry-focused maps versus 4 vehicle-focused maps, judging by what has been seen so far with the Conquest maps, it is a bit worrisome if you're a fan of the previous traditional-style map design. Having played Caspian Border and seen some footage of the 64-player Conquest map, Operation Firestorm, the Conquest game mode still doesn't quite feel like it used to pre-Bad Company. I prefer the all-out warfare type maps that bring a mix of heavy vehicle usage while still keeping infantry in mind. Still, I would choose the Conquest maps available in BF3 over BC2 any day. In my opinion, the Conquest mode could still use some more work. The previous style Conquest map design, delivered pre-Bad Company series on the PC, offered a fair share of large battlefields. The design of some of these maps offered a less condensed play area with flags and bases spread throughout the entire map. It seems DICE wants to design BF3 around a higher emphasis towards infantry gameplay, which is fine if you prefer this change in direction. Maybe DICE still has some surprises with maps that cater to those that enjoy a heavier vehicle influence. Would be nice. We'll soon find out with final upcoming map revealings. So as far as Caspian Border goes, in my opinion, it's a decent map. Even though the map itself is quite large, still, the way how the flags are oriented, it's still not much of a problem traveling by foot going base to base. With the design of Conquest maps so far, I get the feeling DICE will only implement head-on Conquest style maps, meaning each faction will start off with one main uncapturable base and will have to fight over neutral flags to win the match. In previous PC-based Battlefield games, the Conquest game mode featured other variations, including Assault, which was kind of like a hybrid of Conquest and Rush, and Double Assault, where all bases could be captured. These various types of maps also brought more replay value, in my opinion, compared to the basic symmetrical head-on style of Conquest. Also, at first I was under the impression that the Back to Karkin map pack would be available at launch, however was mistaken, but will be released the following month. Considering the same team that brought us Bad Company 2 Vietnam expansion pack is also responsible for this Back to Karkin pack, it's yet again worrisome. Considering that the Vietnam expansion pack features some of the most restrictive, linear maps I've ever experienced, and also hoping the Karkin expansion can merge with its existing client, as this would be most beneficial as to be able to throw these maps in the single server or single map rotation would make the most sense. I also really hope that they keep the same formula for the classic maps as they were originally designed. It would be a shame for them to butcher what could possibly be the best maps available for BF3. Okay, onto some discussion regarding the vehicles tested in Caspian Border. Some suggestions and opinions may be obvious considering that this was beta, but still. Considering the direction of how vehicles present themselves so far compared to BF2, vehicles are much more toned down. Not so much one-man army destroy all things, but they rather appear to portray a slightly more realistic manner and more of a support role for infantry. I'm fine with this change. It's nice not getting obliterated by jet horrors, etc., but it feels like they went a little bit overboard with the vehicle nerf. Keep in mind my experiences may vary, and I did not have access to all of the vehicle unlocks, and obviously things are prone to change. Nonetheless, here's my take and suggestions for vehicles. Ground units felt okay for the most part. Light transport is fine. Obviously increase the turning speed of the mounted machine gun for the gunner position. Tanks could use a small increase of splash damage with its main cannon. Self-propelled anti-air seemed fine. Fighter jets could use a buff, maybe 200% in damage for its main cannon. It seemed like it required at least 2.5 or more solid bursts against an enemy jet to completely destroy it. Compared to BF2 or even BF Play for Free, it seemed like it took only like one decent solid burst to kill a jet. With the current damage system with aircraft, it felt like since it took longer than normal to kill jets, by the time you've downed them, they've already respawned and are ready to take off. Basically, this leaves little time for jets to support ground units. Dogfights felt more so like a mini-game rather than being a part of the battle at whole. Not to mention, strafing infantry barely does any damage. I think I've managed to kill a total of 3 soldiers on the ground with the main cannon. Again, I don't mind a change in toning down air superiority, but while it's pretty weak, kind of meh, neutral about the jet handling. Jets, at least on the PC, need a bump up in speed and acceleration. Performing evasive maneuvers felt a bit wonky at times, like flying upside down while trying to climb up or pull off more advanced maneuvers felt a bit weird. I do like how the jets roll much faster though, in like a more realistic manner. It was also amazing to see how far jets could fly over the map without necessarily going out of bounds, at least for the horizontal plane. It almost seemed as if you could endlessly fly away from the battle. However, I did not test to see how far you could really go, but it was a welcome change. I would suggest that they increase the flight height limit to at least another kilometer. Due to the lack of fog, jets could use a bit more room for dogfights. And once the height limit is reached, jets should lose power. If you continue to climb even further, the jet should go into a stall, then pitch nose down until power can be regained. Also, it would be nice if they reduced or removed the out-of-bound limit for infantry. Several times I'd bail over the map only to be meters away from the so-called safe zone. Kinda lame considering I'm like within walking distance of getting back into the action, whereas jets and helicopters can fly much further away from the action without being killed by the magical invisible boundary enforcer. Since aircraft do not come stock with countermeasures, the beginning stages of flying without them is pretty annoying. With the trend of DICE and their idea of unlock all the things, this feature has a huge negative impact on vehicle effectiveness. Imagine being forced to use the iron sights on your sniper rifle before even given a scope. Since portable anti-air is unlocked very early, it's pretty easy for any Joshmo to take down aircraft that do not have these tools unlocked. I wish that the countermeasures would come standard for all vehicles, and air-to-air missiles standard for jets and helicopters. Even in the early stages of the beta, if you do not have a chance to unlock these upgrades, you will be at a severe disadvantage. The attack helicopters are okay. I suggest an increase of splash damage with the unguided rockets against infantry. Against vehicles they seemed okay. And if possible, increase the pitch speed momentum with helicopters. At times, I had the heli pitched down at about like 30 degrees or at a roll, yet it still seemed to hover relatively in the same area. I prefer helicopters to fly more like they did in BF2, not necessarily being able to do multiple rolls and spins like crazy, but at least have more momentum while at an angle. Although I still have much to practice and adapt to the new flight physics, the mentality of flying attack helos have changed where it seems more beneficial to fly low, use as much cover as possible, and focus more on hit-and-run tactics. However, compared to jets, helis are at a much higher disadvantage. One of my gripes with all vehicles is the new disabled mechanic. I'd suggest toning down the threshold for the damage disabled dot to kick in to maybe about 20% or lower health. As of now, if a vehicle is below 50% health, it will start to lose about 2% health every second. A single RPG to the rear of a tank can disable it. A partial burst from a jet can render a helicopter useless. Without the fire extinguisher perk, at least for aircraft, if you go below 50%, you're pretty much screwed. I bet if they were to implement this system for infantry, the majority of users would hate it. This type of system would work best for a higher emphasis for realism type game like Project Reality. I'd suggest to have 2 hits from anti-air rockets to deal 80% damage against aircraft. Also bring back repairs from airfields. Another gripe is the tremendous knockback against aircraft. Knockback from anti-air in BC2 wasn't cool and isn't fun in BF3 either. Even a partial stray from a jet can send a helicopter to the ground like a piece of dog crap. I'd suggest to tone down this to a bare minimum or completely remove it. As predicted, portable anti-air, at least for the beginning stages against aircraft, feel a bit OP. Maybe later in the long run this will balance out when players have unlocked all of the vehicle perks. But as experienced from the beta, with the extra explosives perk, a single player has the potential to take down 3 aircraft without replenishing ammo. Considering its ease of use of lock-on and fire and forget feature present with the Manpad and Javelin rocket systems, I wish there was a bit more of a risk to using these weapons. I would almost go as far as to say, if someone has a lock-on with the Manpad or Javelin, the user would be seen as a 3D marker from the pilot and gunner's point of view, similar to the active anti-air emplacement icon from BF2. Make it a team effort to take down high-value targets. Finding these pricks can almost be like finding a needle in a haystack. Again, keep in mind this was just from my early experience from the beta. I'm predicting the perk like the thermal vision upgrade will make it much easier in dealing with these threats. On Caspian border, overall it felt like infantry had a much easier time versus vehicles. I don't want to sound like a whiny vehicle whore if I don't sound like one already enough, but honestly for the majority of the time that I did spend on this map, dealing with vehicle threats as infantry didn't really seem too much of a big deal. Anyways, before this vid goes on too long, I'd like to thank you for watching, and until release, I'll see you then.